Hi, this is Ben with Novolux Stereophonic, and today we're taking a look at the Pioneer C90 reference control amplifier. This is a preamp that Pioneer produced from roughly 1986 to 1989. It was part of a series called the Elite Component Series. This would have been paired up with an M90 power amplifier. There was also a really cool turntable and Laserdisc player and other things that came with that series. So that was before Pioneer actively placed the Elite branding on the components themselves. The Elite signifies a level of construction, both parts quality and the way the units feel and perform, that set them apart from other consumer electronics from the time period. So in the 1980s, there's a big shift towards, plastic front plates, computer-controlled switching, lots of ICs, digital displays, things like that. And a lot of the equipment got cheapened down. It just wasn't like the 1970s audio equipment that we saw. So it was important for certain brands to signify that specific series or components were a step above the standard consumer grade product. So for Pioneer, that was Elite. For Sony, they used the ES nomenclature. So this is truly an audiophile piece, and it does have video switching as well, which was becoming popular in the late 80s. So in this video, I'm going to go over the different versions of the C90, some unique design principles, do a review of the front and the rear panel, take a look at the inside. So if that sounds interesting, stick around and we will dive into this thing. The C90 had really 5 different versions of this design. The ones that say C90 on them, there's going to be 2 versions, one that only has 3 video inputs and one with 5 video inputs. After that, in 1988, the C90A was introduced in 2 versions, one that had no video switching at all. It was only audio, an audio preamplifier. That one's probably the most desirable nowadays because this circuitry kind of became obsolete. The other version of the C90A had all the video switching, but also added S-video inputs and outputs to the unit. The C90A had an upgraded chassis construction, but otherwise was very similar to the C90. And then in '89, Pioneer introduced the C91 Elite, which was again very similar to the S-video version, but it had the Elite nomenclature right on the front of the unit. Next up, we'll take a look at the front panel. I've adjusted the angle a little bit so that we can get a better look at some of the indicator lights and stuff on here. The front panel of the C90 is very sleek. It's got a reflective metal finish, and the only real control that we have here is the volume control. Now this uses a motorized Alps control, so a remote plus minus volume command will cause this to mechanically ramp up and manipulate that control. So this is a real analog volume control. It's not done with some sort of digital IC chip or something like that. So to power this thing on, we have a main power. This actually cuts power to the unit itself, and then it goes into standby. When we click this, it's going to stabilize for a second, and then a relay will engage, and now this thing can produce audio. We have source selection here. We've got our analog audio sources here, 2 tape loops, and then we have, if we push one of these buttons here, it will activate green for video and red for audio. So this displays that if we go to VCR 1, we're going to be viewing the VCR as well as hearing the VCR's audio. Now, we do have an option on this which is kind of unique. I could say activate a turntable and then use this button here to activate a video source with the audio independent. This was, I guess, a pretty cool feature back in the day, so that you could have something on in the background while listening to something else. So that's kind of it for up here. I guess besides this muting control, this is just like a negative 20 dB muting. And we can see that activates a light down here, and we can hear a relay click that's putting a little extra resistance into the audio circuit. This also has a fold down panel here, and this reveals some additional controls and inputs. So the controls over here are all for video enhancement. So these were different filters that could be put on the composite video connections and manipulated to improve the signal. We have a couple auxiliary inputs on the front here that have both video and audio. and then our tone control circuit, which can be defeated here. So again, we hear a relay click when the tone is activated, and there's a red indicator to show us that this is in circuit. So this was obviously, done with the audiophile in mind, because a lot of times you want to listen to the purest signal possible and not have the tone in circuit at all. We also have a mode selector to switch between stereo and mono. For phono, we have MM and then 2 different loadings for moving coil, all relay activated. So this kind of just goes around in a circle as we push that control. We have a subsonic filter and a high filter, which are each indicated by their corresponding LEDs. So that's about it for the front panel. Pretty basic operation up here, and then if you want to get more advanced, you flip this down, you can manipulate your tone and other things. So let's spin it around and take a look at the connections on the back. The back panel of the C90 is pretty busy, but as we'll see in a minute, we can eliminate most of this from consideration because the composite video switching in this unit is pretty much obsolete. Now on the C90A and the 91 Elite that had S-video switching, that could be pretty useful for somebody that is a little bit nostalgic with Laserdisc. It might be nice to plug a Laserdisc in and get progressive scan out of it and then send that signal out to like a 3-gun projector or a high-end CRT display. But for use in a modern system, this is pretty much obsolete. This was mostly designed for VCRs back in the day. It does have an RF modulator output. My assumption is that there would have been an external box that you could buy that would have a DIN connection from here to the box, and then that would modulate the signal onto an F connector so that you could plug it into the antenna connection on a TV and go to channel 3 or 4 or something like that and view it on a display that didn't have discrete composite video inputs. So let's move on from there and look at the analog audio section. So each one of the video sources, you can see they're delineated by rectangles here. So this is VCR1, it's video IO, and then it's audio input and output. So this is technically, from an audio standpoint, a tape loop. So each one of the video sources has a corresponding audio connection that can certainly be used, but there's better ways to connect audio equipment to this unit because of the way that it's designed. So we'll see in a minute when we open this up, all the video switching and tape record features are done with switching ICs. The real high fidelity sources are switched in this unit with relays. So we can see gold-plated connections here on the phono input and on the CD input. Those were obviously the preferred analog audio inputs for this unit, and we can tell that further by the design on which inputs were selected by those ICs, which we'll take a look at in a second. And one of the unique things about this is the shortest signal path is actually not CD or phono. The shortest signal path in this unit is actually tape 2. So this tape input here on the play goes to the least amount of switching relays. So this arguably would be the best input to use, except that it does not have the gold-plated connections, and you'll lose some of the features that you would get over here. The phono input on the inside, we'll see, goes to a very nice phono stage that has a hybrid system for moving coil, which incorporates a boost filter and also step-up transformers. We've got our phono ground here, and then some switched and unswitched outlets, and of course the output is gold-plated as well. So this was obviously designed as a audiophile audio piece with kind of the video switching built into it. This is why I would argue that the C90A that eliminated all the video switching was probably the best of these 5 units as far as audio quality and audio use, especially with this becoming obsolete. So that's about it for the rear panel. Let's take off the covers and see what this thing looks like on the inside. To get inside of this unit, we're going to have to remove these decorative panels. This is just a like a fake wood veneer. Sometimes these have issues with peeling. This model I've got a little bit in the corner and the front here. It's a 5mm hex. So we just need to remove these 2 screws. And generally I don't recommend that a beginner or consumer would open up a piece of electronics, but in this case, as we'll see with the relays in a minute, it might be necessary just to see if some of the preventative maintenance has been done on your unit. So let's go ahead and pull this panel. We can see now we have access to the screws here. As always, if you're following along, you're doing so at your own risk here. Make sure the unit is unplugged, it's been powered down for a while before you attempt to open it up. You can see there's this little piece of brass on here as well. All right, this unit is pretty cool on the inside. First thing I noticed when I opened this up the first time was all the copper plating. Every chassis component is copper plated here along with copper plated screws, and apparently constructing it that way helps with resonance and vibration. And this also features some special isolation feet that Pioneer used, so obviously an audiophile piece constructed with sound quality in mind. The component selection is very good. All these green capacitors are Nichicon Muse, which I use a lot in bipolar applications and audio restoration even today. The power supply topology is pretty cool. So there's 3 independent power transformers. The left and right audio channel each get their own transformer, their own power supply and regulation, and plus and minus voltages. So everything here is symmetrical for the audio circuits. And then there's a third transformer that is used to power all of the computer control and switching mechanisms for the front, as well as the drive for all the relays. So each one of these little black boxes in here, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think there's a third one down there, so at least 12 relays in this. And the reason they did that was to avoid switching at controls, which can cause crosstalk, and also shortening the signal path. Now, this unit, when I first opened it up, I opened it because I was having an issue. I had a completely dead channel, and knowing that these have relays in them, relays can wear out, and it's a known issue that the relays in these do go bad, you know, after they've been running for 20, 30 years. Those contacts can get worn. You can get intermittent issues depending on what features are in use. So I initially was going to get the model numbers on the relays and swap all those out, but when I opened it up, I found mine are all modern relays. And on the back side of the board, I could see that they'd been clearly soldered on and replaced. So this one has already had the relay replacement. If yours has not, these relays are likely a clear cover, and you can see the mechanism on the inside. If it's black like this, they've likely been replaced at some point in the past by a technician. So on this one, what it ended up being was an extremely dirty balance control. It couldn't even allow a signal through, but after a thorough cleaning, I did get both channels back. So this one had been serviced in the past, but developed an additional issue with a dirty control. So I've resolved that. Now this one's fully functional again. So that's relay switching there. These are all little switching ICs, which are kind of cool. It's like a collection of switches built into one single integrated circuit, and that is what is used in here to switch the the non-audio critical sources like the VCRs and stuff, and some of the auxiliary source switching. Remember, on the back panel there was gold plating on the phono and the CD player, so those are coming and controlled by these 2 relays, and then any signal that's going to this phono board, we can just see down here, this is a step-up transformer. That is very rare in almost any preamplifier. Sometimes you'll see a step-up transformer built into a really high-end phono stage, but very rarely into a preamp. This unit has a very capable hybrid phono stage, which is kind of its claim to fame. These additional relays are for tape loops and processor loops and things like that. And remember, I did mention that the tape 2 has the cleanest signal path. It actually comes right into one of these relays, and whether it's, depending on how it's engaged, it comes through a single relay and then out to the rest of this, where all of the other sources have to travel through the processor and tape loops and all that before they get to the preamp circuitry. So if you have a really critical source like a DAC or something like that, try plugging it into tape 2 and see if it makes any sort of difference. With the relay contacts, there's probably not much of a difference at all, but technically a cleaner signal path. I guess that's about it for the inside of this thing. You can see all these cords up here, very busy control architecture up here, but overall very nicely built piece. Even though it looks complex on the inside, it's a very clean short signal path, and that comes out in the spec sheet where you see that 0.002% THD. So that's about it for the inside. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you like this content, please subscribe, and I'll keep this stuff coming. Thanks again for stopping by.